Right, the next scale upgrade I'm doing is not a functional item, but it's something I'm really looking forward to putting on because it looks awesome. This is a dual jerrycan holder. This is made by DS Pro. You can go to dspro.com and find their products. This is DSP404 1/10 scale Rubicon dual can rack. Now this will fit just behind the spare wheel here. I'll remove that. It fits onto the swing out arm. Right, so that's the side facing out. Turn it around, that's the back side. This is going to go onto there. Yes, I said back side, stop giggling. Right, there we go. That's going to go on roughly like that. If you go down much more, then the lower hole isn't going to go into much plastic. So I'm going to try and put this as high up as possible. Right, I've spotted my two holes here, and I'm just going to do a bit of a pilot hole with the body reamer just to give the drill somewhere to pick up on. So there's one there, and then one there. Now I've drilled the bottom hole. That was fine, that just goes straight through. Drilled the second hole and then realised when I turned it round, the first hole comes up through the flat plastic, the second one comes through this kind of bracing piece. My drill wasn't quite square. If you're going to do this, make sure when you're drilling through you come out completely square and get your hole right in the middle of that. I now need to get my drill through here. Oops, sorry about that. I need to get my drill through here, which you can see came off at an angle, and then bend that round. So it's now coming through the middle. It's not the end of the world, because once the nut and bolt are on, the spare tyre is going to be on, you won't notice anyway. Right, I've found some nuts and bolts, or screws in this case. I'm using HPI part number Z356 button head screw M3 18mm. Two of those. I know that one's a little bit long, but once the tyre is on, you're just not going to see it. It's going to be like this, and that will go on there, and you can't see the longer screw. It's not worth cutting it down. What I've done on the screw that comes through this sort of webbing support here, using a really sharp blade, I've just cut into it slightly just to make a flat surface there where the screw comes through, so that I can fit a locking nut on, and the nut has got a nice flat surface to go onto rather than it going onto an angle. So we should be able to bring these through and fit the nuts on. I'm just using another couple of the Axial thin locking M3 nuts. Could use a thick one, but I just happen to have a packet of thin ones lying around, and there we go, that's installed. Now that the axial plastic is so soft, there's actually a slight lateral bit of movement there. Not much I can do about that really. The plastic's so soft. Right, so here's the long threaded screw that goes through. The DS Pro bracket slightly stops that screw going, and I might be able to flex it out of the way, hopefully. Otherwise I've got to take the bracket back off. No, that you can squeeze that in. There we go. So that's the arm back on there, and there we go. And then finally we want to pop on. Which way around? Should they be that way or this way? What do you think is most aerodynamic? Does it matter? I don't know. Let's go for that way for now. Right, there we go. Need some straps on, but there is the DS Pro NATO dual fuel can mount, which I think looks pretty awesome. Nice one, Ryan. We like it. And I've got to mention, on the DS Pro rack there's these two little mounting points here. So if you've got some scale accessories like this, these are Pro line ones, they fit through there very nicely. Now, thing on that is, as you can see, they're quite a loose fit, so they can go through. So what you'd probably do is shut this up and then pop your accessories on, and over time they're going to fall down like that, which means number one, you've got them sticking out the bottom here, and number two, when you try to open your rack you can't, because they're fouling it up. So a little tip for you, just get some, if you've got it, some heat shrink tubing. You can slide the heat shrink tubing up over these parts, and then that will stop them sliding down. If you want to, you could heat it up a little bit. Obviously this is quite delicate plastic, so be careful about putting heat near it, but if you've got heat shrink tubing the right diameter, it's a reasonable fit, so you can make these stop like that. Right, fuel can in rack needs fixing in. The standard straps of the DS Pro rack, don't really know what to do with them, to be honest with you. I could thread them through and maybe knot them around the other side where they come out, but it's going to be a bit rattly, and knotting them is not great, so can't take them in and out. What I could do is use some of these. These are from www.offroad.eu. These are scale straps. They're very long, but I could cut them. They're quite cool, but they're a bit fiddly, so I'm not going to do straps at all. Check this out, see what you think. Fuel cans come out. Sheet steel. Cut the sheet steel with some tin snips, little sections here. That will fit in there, and I'm going to glue them down. Why am I going to glue some metal in the base? You'll find out soon. Right, so we're on to the G-Made wheel hubs now. Down here to replace the standard black plastic ones. This is G-Made part GM70112 1.9 RH01 wheel hub silver. I think I got those on eBay. You can get G-Made stuff from a number of places. Right, so here's effectively the replacement nut. This has got a locking nut inside, and then this threaded aluminium section. Now what you have to do is work out, depending on the length of your output shaft down here, is that going to come out too far? Because if it comes out too far, then you're not going to be able to get the Allen key in that hole there to screw these on. Obviously if the bolt from the axle is too long, it's going to push the Allen key out slightly. Be really careful that you don't have a tiny bit of engagement, otherwise your Allen key is going to sort of strip that out. So offer it up for the first time, see how you go. If you've got too much shaft sticking out, they give you a whole bunch of these black washers that you can put on first to bring this out slightly. And as I mentioned earlier, they do give you a bunch of O-rings, and what you're supposed to do is stretch that O-ring around the end here like that, and then you can screw this on, and that O-ring grips the cap, but it grips it really tight. If you get these, try it out, but I'm not doing the O-rings. I'm just doing up the last nut now, and one thing I was thinking when I was doing this up was, they give you this whacking great Allen key. Whatever you do, don't put the short end on and then do it up. You'll get such leverage with this, you're going to break something over here. This is a kind of Allen key you probably have it on a bicycle for doing up a seat stem or something. You can put lots of force on that. So use the long end and just purchase on the small one, and you really don't need to put a lot of force on that. It's a locking nut, it's not going to come loose, so be careful with your axles. So my trusty little syringe full of marine grease. Now the reason I'm doing this is these have a very fine thread on them. It's aluminium, so it is going to rust and corrode slightly when it gets wet, and that's going to be a real pain to try and get off. There's sort of markings of bolts there, but these are really smooth, so you just know any sort of corrosion that's going to make these threads bind up, it's going to be hard to get off, and then you're going to have to get a pair of pliers on them, and you're going to crush the aluminium. It's going to be horrible. Sorry everybody on the pond, the other side. Aluminium, aluminum. I know, strange English people. Right, so now these just screw on. You can do these by hand. You don't need to do them up with pliers or anything. As long as your hands aren't too greasy, you should be able to get enough grip to do those up. Obviously, once you run your truck the first couple of times, you might, with these on, you might want to check that these aren't working loose. I guess the people from G-Made would say you should use the O-rings and they won't come loose, but trust me, those O-rings bind it up so tightly. I really thought I wasn't going to get one off when I tried it earlier. So there we are, there's the G-Made hubs fitted. I think they look really nice. Nice little extra scale addition there. Obviously, if you do use these, you need to make sure you take one of these with you if you go out and about. These won't get it off. So another thing for your trail kit bag. Right, another scale upgrade I've done is the fuel filler cap on this side. Now on my body shell I didn't want to have the standard black axial stickers running over here. The sticker does have a fuel filler cap in the sticker, but no sticker, no filler cap. So what I've got here is my own fuel filler cap. Don't know if you can see that on camera, but that does actually have the kind of the rivets and the flap that you'd open in that. Now what that is a product by a company called Arches. They're in Italy. www.arches-rc.it. Racing fuel cap 1/10 scale. I think this is part number AGCAC05, and that comes it's about the size of a dime. It's a very thin metal, I don't know if it's laser etched or something, silver metal fuel filler cap. All I've done with that is spray it with black Plastidip, 2 coats. Plastidip, obviously when it shrinks, has taken up that profile really nicely, and then on the back just a tiny little dab of EvoStick Serious glue. Shoe goo would be fine. Make sure you don't put so much in that when you push it on it squirts around the edge. Literally just squeeze it on, leave it to dry, job done. Right, so we're moving on up now. I'll come on to the roof rack in a moment, but before we do, I think every scale model really needs a driver. Having these things driving around with no one inside looks a bit wrong to me. So here are some figures. You can put whatever figure you like in your RC. Go find it at a toy shop if you like, whatever you want to, sky's the limit. My advice, if you're not sure where to find a good figure from, is to go and have a look on the internet for NECA, N-E-C-A. They're a company who make figures like Peeta and Katniss we've got here from the Hunger Games. They make lots of figures from films and popular television series, and the good thing is these figures are about the right size and they're reasonably well detailed and reasonably well articulated. The problem with these ones is that they have an upper body and a lower body, and a piece of kind of, well, this is sort of hard rubbery plastic goes through from the bottom to the top and allows the centre to pivot, but they're not going to be able to sit down. These ones don't have articulated legs. So unfortunately I've got to say we need to there we go. Right, basically you're going to have to be a bit brutal to some of your figures, and then you can get them to go in your model, so they'll fit in there like a driver, and off we go. Now, about the powers of magic, my driver is in there, and check this out. He's in, and he's driving, and he's not coming out. How on earth do we do that? Quite simply, in there, there's black Plastidip, but there are 2 magnets. I've taken the body, dremeled out some recesses and put some magnets in there, and he will now stick to things that are metal. Let's find something. There we go. So on the underside of the body shell, in the seating positions, I've also got 2 magnets arranged and stuck on the body shell with glue. So I can now stick my driver or my passenger in. There we go, and they're driving. And also I'm afraid that Katniss is also going to have to sorry about that. There we go. So there we go, figures for driving fixed in, and then you can take them out if you want to use them for something else. Magnets in the legs, back together, there we go. And what I've also done on some other accessories, take for example here's a Proline, I guess this is a beer cooler or a cool box, 2 magnets in there. Now that will, if I get it around the right way, that will stick down. Or I've also got magnets over here, there we go, so I can fit parts in. I've got some magnets at the back as well, get it around the right way. So you can see it's really easy to get your scale accessories in and out of your model if you magnetise your model, which takes me nicely onto the roof rack. Now this is a Proline roof rack, links in the description. Now what I've done here is I've mounted a metal plate on the roof rack so I can clip my accessories on. Could be a bit macabre and clip my drivers on, but that would be a kind of weird. So let's not do that. Let's stick to the scale accessories. So tip for you there is just to use magnets, and that's the reason why I'm sticking metal in this DS Pro rear rack. What I will do on these fuel filler cans is Dremel out some holes and stick some magnets in there, and then I'll be able to stick those in with magnets and they will not fall out. I'll also be able to move the fuel filler can and stick it on the roof rack, put it wherever I want to. The neodymium, I think it is how you pronounce it, magnets I've got are quite small ones. I think they're about 6mm square. They seem to be strong enough for holding that kind of stuff on. You can find them in some hobby shops, toy shops, and also on the internet. I would just say a word of warning, they are very dangerous. The bigger you go, the stronger they get very quickly. And also keep them away from small children. I've heard some horror stories where children have actually swallowed some of the magnets and they've stuck together in their stomach. So just a warning on that. But my top tip is stick some magnets in your scale accessories. You can clip it on your model nice and easily.
What is it, Katniss?
We have received a sighting of the Mutated Minions.
Where was it?
In Sector 7.
I'm going there right now.
Be careful, Peeta. The Rubicon has not been tested yet.